Hello, Serena. It's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for joining. How are you today?
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for having me. Yeah, I'm okay, thanks. How are you?
Happy to finally have this conversation with you. I have been meaning to talk to you for the album Noctul a couple of years ago, but I'm happy also that this is finally the time for me to address your music. Of course, the main purpose of this conversation is to discuss the weight of the mask and, of course, SVALBARD as a whole. But I would also like to give the opportunity to anyone out there listening or watching this to know you a little bit better. So for that reason, I have a couple of topics before we give into the center part of the conversation, okay?
Sure.
Can you share a bit about how you remember discovering metal music, like your early conscious encounters to heavy music as a whole, and also discovering your motivation for playing instruments?
I first discovered metal music on a PlayStation 1 game called MTV Sports Snowboarding. Fear Factory had a song on that game, and I heard Fear Factory, and at the time I'd not heard anything like that before with screaming on a song. And I think at first I was only 12 years old. I think I was a little bit scared of it, but I was also fascinated by it. And I found myself, I kept listening to that song over and over again. And eventually, I got a hold of the album Obsolete by Fear Factory. So that was like my first metal album that I owned. And then from there, I, discovered a lot of the new metal bands. I was obsessed with Slipknot. Yeah, really, really into their self-titled album. And that was what Slipknot were the band that sort of inspired me to pick up an instrument. Prior to this, I had piano lessons where, my family made me go and learn piano from a really young age, but I didn't enjoy it. But when I heard Slipknot, I really wanted to start playing drums. So the
Mm.
first instrument I played metal on was actually drums. I learned drums as I was a teenager. And then a few years into that, I got a bit fed up because the drum teacher was teaching me like all the boring technical stuff, and I just wanted to play fast and wanted to play double kick and stuff. So I decided I wanted to start playing guitar instead. And at that point, I think my mum was pissed off because she had paid for me to have drum lessons and a drum kit, and she was like, I'm not going to pay for a guitar and guitar lessons as well. So I did it on my own. I used to sneak into my sister's bedroom and try and figure out Slayer songs on her classical acoustic guitar. Um, and yeah, I've never had a guitar lesson. I just sort of figured everything out for myself. I have quite, yeah, an unconventional style of holding a pick and an unconventional style of tremolo picking and stuff, but it works for me. But yeah, and it was seeing bands like Kitty live definitely inspired me to create my own music because they were just such trailblazers. And yeah, seeing them do it made me think that maybe it was something I could do as well. So I discovered new metal when I was 12. And then I'd say yeah, I saw Kitty when I was 14 years old. So yeah, early teens.
Okay, and then you went on to listening to heavier extreme stuff, uh, meaning black metal, because you have mentioned before that black metal is your love, and you finally release a project, Noctu. What about black metal? Is it that you enjoy as a listener, and nowadays, what is it that you enjoy the most about it?
I think black metal is a feeling as well as a genre. Nothing else has that atmosphere or hits you quite as much in the heart for me as black metal. I think it has like a bleakness and a beauty that's all its own. And also it's incredibly diverse. Like there's so many black metal bands that take black metal as a base ingredient and then they go off into all kinds of avant-garde and interesting and experimental directions. So yeah, I think it's a very like interesting and unique genre, and I love the vocal style, like the really kind of the high-pitched wails and stuff. I find them very effective when you're listening to them. They really convey emotion and darkness quite well, I think.
And you have used it for Svalbard all these years, maybe more or less over the years, but the elements and the inspiration for black metal, it has always been present with your music, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And it's me, out of all the members of the band, it's me that brings the black metal influence. That's the sort of the side that I come from, and that's what inspires all my tremolo picking and the style of leads that I choose and that kind of thing.
If the opportunity arises, will you give the chance? Will you give you the chance to have a project about black metal? Let's say a band about it.
I mean, I released my solo album Nocturnal in 2021, or two, I can't remember which year it was. 2021. I tried to build a live band around that and make it a full band experience. But to be completely honest with you, it didn't quite work because when I recorded that album, I went crazy and did like 6 to 8 guitar layers of different melodies on every single song, which is really hard to do effectively live with only 2 guitar players. And I felt when we did 2 shows, and the songs just didn't sound like how they sound on the record. So it's an interesting one. I'd love to play in a black metal band. Like I'd love to play in Immortal or something. It'd be really fun. But I'm not sure I could take my black metal project to like that that kind of full band experience. I'm sorry, someone's just knocked on my door. Give me 2 seconds.
Of course,
Sorry about that.
no problem. Well, let's break character for a bit here, because there's something I want to ask you personally. A friend of mine told me a few years ago that One Piece is one of your favorite animes. How true is that?
Yes, yeah, it's one of my favorites. So my favorite animes would probably be Hunter by Hunter, One Piece, Dragon Ball Super, Seven Deadly Sins, Blue Exorcist. Yeah, there's a lot I like, but One Piece is amazing. Really, really like my favorite arc in One Piece is probably Skypiea. So yeah, big One Piece fan. My favorite character is either Usopp or Chopper, depending on my mood.
Usopp and villain. Do you have a favorite villain?
Oh, that's a good question.
Are you up to date with the events of the series?
No, I'm not up to date. Sadly, at the moment, I don't have much time to keep up to date with One Piece, so I am a little bit behind.
Where did you left it? Just to know.
It was oh my gosh, what's the arc called? I literally can't remember the name of it. Oh my God.
One,
Uh,
probably.
huh?
Wano, probably.
Yeah, that's it.
The one with the samurais, right?
Yes, yeah, that's it.
That's a very crucial part of the story. I wish that, I hope that you could resume the series in the future.
Oh, I would love to. Yeah.
Have you seen the live action? Or are you
I've seen the trailer, and I have strong opinions on this. I think that anime is such an expressive and liberating art form for telling a story and for conveying ideas that are out of this world. And to reduce that down to live action is a negative thing, in my opinion, because you're limiting it, and it doesn't look as good. I don't think the characters resemble you know, what you get from the anime or the manga. It just feels like it's less than what the anime show is.
there's like a fine line between cool as an anime and cheesy, like in real
Mm.
life. scenario. Well, one last final question about One Piece, because it's one of my favorite, if not my favorite. What is it about One Piece that you like as a story?
Oh my gosh, the heart. Like it's so human, and the concept of like the Nakama and these kind of this traveling bunch of outcasts who the world doesn't really understand them, but they understand each other. I think, yeah, it's there's, even though One Piece is very like wild and surreal with some of its concepts, it's also very human, in the way that it depicts relationships with other people.
Exactly. If you remove the fantasy of it, it's very real about the human experience of the adventure with friends and relationships. That is also what I like about it. Well, now let's get into the serious part of the conversation. You have stated before that the intention of for Svalbard music is to make their audience feel less alone, and I think that is a great way to feel about your music, or a great goal at least. And because of that, I want to talk or focus this conversation about the connection with your music and your audience from different angles, starting with you. Do you remember a moment you had with a song, an album, a band, or you being there immersed in the audience from a live performance that really changed how you felt about music and made you decide to be on the other side, transmitting emotions?
I think the first time I saw Nightwish on their first UK show, I think it was 2004. It was after Century Child had just been released. And yeah, they were performing End of All Hope, which is one of my favorite Nightwish songs. And I always think, like to me, Nightwish is just, it's such a special band. There's so much emotion to their music, and seeing them play live and just being in that moment and seeing them create such magic definitely lit a fire in me to try and do the same thing.
Tell me, in what ways, whatever element that hit you as an audience member before, do you think that it still is relevant for you as a musician?
I think the emotions that I feel when watching bands I love are the same emotions I feel when I'm performing music on stage. It's a very cathartic experience. You really feel like you're letting go of so many emotions. And it's a really positive thing for me to be able to write a song about, maybe a negative experience or a dark time that I'm going through, and write a song about that. And then 6 months later, perform it live on stage and be able to scream these words out and have my guitar like playing as loud as possible and share that moment with my bandmates and the audience. Like, it has a really transformative power in that you think, oh, this song was come from a feeling of pain, and now it is in a moment of celebration and a moment that feels really good and really empowering. So that's definitely something that's it's one of the best parts of being in a band, I think.
To perform your songs live, which come from a point of personal intimacy, and then when you brought them live to the audience, is it possible that these moments of euphoria and concentration with the audience have shaped your music in the past, or like hold that power to influence you, what you brought in your music?
Um, I think the main things that influence me when I'm writing music is just searching for the feeling, the thing that really strikes you in the heart. Um, and I never sort of write with the idea of what's going to be a good moment live, because you can't predict it and you can't try to create those moments. You just have to let them take shape naturally. So the things that influence me more, like when I'm playing a lead, if it makes me feel an emotion, that's when I know that the idea is good to keep. So I just keep playing until I feel something, basically, when it comes to writing music.
Once you encounter your style or your way of compose, how do you structure the experience, like to find the right place for a melody, within the intensity of a song, or in the lows or the high moments of the particular parts of the lyrics?
I mean, the way we structure a song musically in Svalbard is the honest answer is we argue about it. So we all write together in the room. It's a very collaborative process. There's not, one person who has the final say on everything. We all have to agree on everything. So it's can be quite a long and difficult process, and you have to be able to take criticism of your own ideas from other people. So, and then when it comes to structuring, everyone has their own ideas of what they think is the most effective. And we just try each different idea, trial and error, see, does this guitar lead work here, or does it need to wait a little bit before it comes in? That kind of thing. You just keep trying, almost like you keep tearing it apart to reconstruct it so that in the end, the final result is the best it can be. And then in terms of writing the lyrics, I write all the lyrics. It's a very personal part of the journey that the rest of the band don't have an input in. And that's something I do after we've written all of the music. So we'll write the entire music for the album, and then I'll go through all the depressing notes on my phone and turn them into lyrics.
How do you approach? I mean, how do you find the right approach to lyrics for the music? Meaning, do you like to reflect the current stage of your life with the current album, or do you somehow avoid that kind of discussion?
Yeah, definitely. Every Svalbard album is about what I'm going through at the time, or what sociology situations have angered me at the time. It's always a reflection of the moment. I think that's what good music is. It's like a time capsule. And for me, because I write so openly and honestly, it'd be very difficult for me to not write about what I'm experiencing at the time. I don't sort of know any other way, to be honest with you. So, and because when we wrote The Weight of the Mask as an album, I was experiencing quite a bad time with depression. That's influenced all of the lyrics on that album to be about that, really, about my struggles with mental illness.
With every album and with every stage of your life, different or else, do you find like beyond being cathartic, it's also reconstructive of yourself? Like you see in the past the person you were, uh, encapsulated in one album, and see where you are self now and think, okay, that was the right move to me.
Definitely. I think when there's something reconstructive about being able to write songs about things that you're experiencing at the time, and then you can move on from them in a way. So, like, I always think of it as, you can be struggling with something in your life, and then you write a song about it, and writing that song transforms what you are experiencing into something else, into something positive, a song that you can play on stage and scream that's going to connect with other people, and it gives that pain purpose. um and then a few years later down the line, you can reflect on it and you listen to these albums, and you feel like it feels like looking back at old photos,
Wow.
because you recognize those things that you're talking about in the album, but you can also see that you are not in that place anymore, which is nice.
Well, overall, I consider the music of Svalbard unique in the contrast, and the different stylistic elements involved, but also the playful dynamics. And for what is worth, one of the things that I like the most, and that has always been present in every album, is this way of, whenever the heavy parts are hitting, there's also a lightness to it, you know?
I feel like we deliberately use contrast in Svalbard musically to illustrate like the opposing sides of the emotions. Like there's the hope, and I think that a lot of the melodies and my guitar leads represent a hopefulness and a fight, and like the fight and the willpower to keep going when you are struggling with depression. But then the heaviness, the aggressive side, that represents the frustration and the anger, and yeah, like this the struggle. So Svalbard is definitely, the contrast is there to musically illustrate that battle. It's almost like an argument between two sides in your head. And that's how it comes out in Svalbard, with having two very different sides. But I'm also a firm believer in binary oppositions and opposites defining each other. So I feel like having lighter passages of music, having more melodic, happy parts, it gives more weight so that when the heaviness really kicks in, you feel it even more.
When you transition from these moments of pain and inner reflection with your music, the hope behind it or on the side of it is to get better yourself. If you at some moment in your life find betterment in your life as a whole, that also could be a powerful tool for you as a source of inspiration.
Oh, definitely. I'm not one of those people who believes in the idea of the tortured artist and that you have to stay miserable to be able to make good music or good art. I don't believe in that at all. And everything in Svalbard, especially in The Weight of the Mask, is about fighting to get better. It's about trying to change your life. It's about, learning how to cope and live with depression and accept that reality and be able to grow strong and do as much as you can to not let it suck the life out of you. Like, so yeah, I think if there's ever a time when I'm in a better place, then I look forward to how that's going to sound in Svalbard and like what's going to shine through in that moment.
I want to kind of offer a personal reflection about this album. As I mentioned before, there's an interesting duality here. Uh, because for one, the music, yes, is uplifting, aggressive, cathartic, full of external expression. But then you go for the lyrics and find an opposite emotion, like the darkness of the human experience. The music and the lyrics of Svalbard can embody a reflection of us as individuals in cases where depression and mental health problems are involved, how we perceive the people around us, and how we are perceived externally as cheerful people, happy, but internally we are dealing with our own demons, with our own problems, which are often hidden from others, right? Personally, I have been dealing with depression for several years, and this is not something that I discuss with friends, family, or anyone else. So yeah, I can imagine that none of us feels comfortable in our own skin, at least not all the time, and then we hide behind the mask, right? So what can you tell me about how do you understand your music and the place that you arrived um, for this album, for The Weight of the Mask?
I feel like sort of picking up on what you said about feeling sort of like you need to hide away your sort of true feelings. That's definitely the theme of this album, feeling obligated to wear a mask and not let the depression show and not let the kind of the dark reality of how that makes you act become apparent. But then there's also the concept that the mask acts as a barrier. So when you're constantly wearing a mask around other people, you're preventing yourself from being able to make meaningful connections because you're not really present. You're showing them a side that you think they want to see and showing them a smile that has no conviction and no reality behind it. So yeah, those are kind of the meanings of the album in terms of like where it fits with like wearing a mask in society and how it feels to feel like you have to pretend and have to hide your emotions. And I think that's conveyed musically by that contrast, by, some of the songs on this album are some of the softest songs we've ever written, like How to Swim Down. But then some of the songs we've written are some of the heaviest songs we've ever written, like Faking It. So I think in that musical contrast, you can hear that struggle, that battle of what it's like to feel obliged to wear a mask around other people.
And um, yes, that song that you mentioned before is have to be one of my favorites from your entire catalog, How to Swim Down, and also Pillars in the Sand. I want to ask you if the way this is construct musically is a reaction of the previous album, consciously.
Um, I mean, this album, it's definitely got a slightly different sound to it. I think it's definitely more direct. and it's definitely less subtle than the previous album, When I Die Will I Get Better. And I'm not sure if we deliberately intended to make the album more kind of hard hitting or deliberate. It was just how it takes shape. Like, we're the kind of band, we don't walk into the studio and go, we're going to write a heavy song today. We don't really like to enter the writing process with too many preconceptions of what we want to do. I think the best thing is just to write what you're feeling at the time and write the melodies that appeal to you at the time and let it kind of take shape in that moment naturally without putting too much pressure on it to sound a certain way. But overall, in result, when you listen to them next to each other, I think The Weight of the Mask sounds, yeah, a lot more punchier and direct than when compared to our previous albums.
Well, as I mentioned, this is honestly my favorite album of the band so far. It has all of the things that I appreciate about it, and again, I feel it in my chest. The emotion of these songs is something hard to describe. But this album comes like um at the best times for the band because are also now with a bigger label, Nuclear Blast. Do you feel somehow the pressure of growing as a band, growing as an individual, but also have to respond to somehow the expectations?
I think we definitely put a lot of pressure on ourselves with the idea of releasing our first album on Nuclear Blast when we were writing it. We definitely, wanted to make it absolutely the best it could be. And that resulted in us questioning ourselves a lot and doubting a lot of our ideas. And so many songs didn't even make the album because we were worried that they weren't good enough. So I think we really were quite meticulous with our approach to writing this album and just making sure that it was the best it could possibly be, because we look up to Nuclear Blast so much. Like, all my favorite bands are on that record label, and we really wanted to create something for them that we could be proud of and that would be good enough for a label that we hold in such high regard.
How do you disregard or take one song as the best elements or the best parts of an album? How do you make peace with an album that a song that is finished or an album that is finished with one or more song or less?
It's really hard. So we were still changing parts of songs the day before we went in to record this album. We were really obsessive with it. And I think I remember saying to the rest of the guys, please stop changing. Please stop changing little bits in the songs, because you don't want to overdo it and you don't want to overthink it too much. But yeah, I think basically it ended up being a time constraint that stopped us from continuing to make changes, because we had to go into the studio and record these songs. So that was what made the final version what they are, was that we didn't have another year to obsess over them anymore, so we just had to kind of call it where they were. But I was one of the people, I was like, they're done, like these songs are done, we don't need to add or change any more parts. But I think some of the other guys in the band, yeah, they can get quite obsessed with the details and questioning things when writing the songs.
So in the end, the album is how much different from before those changes were made?
Oh my God. I mean, well, we were working on it over time. We were writing this album for about 2 years. And I swear every time we met up, the songs changed every single time. So they've probably, if I compared what Eternal Spirits sounded like 2 years ago to how it sounds now, very big differences. Yeah.
So and in a way, this changed your perception of the album. Like the album cover, for example, was already established. Like was a decision made before all these changes.
The album artwork was made after the album was recorded. So we recorded this album in February, and then we approached Hester Asplan to create the artwork for us in March. So we always leave stuff like that till afterwards. once you've got the music fully finalized and recorded so that you can reflect it best in the artwork and everything else that goes with it. I think it could be a bit limiting to have the artwork before you've recorded the final versions of the songs.
I am always curious about the decision making behind the album artwork, and especially one that has a connection attached to the previous one. You know, the school and that part, but also the color scheme. First, ask you if you are a believer of synesthesia, like the color of music. Or how do you choose the color for an album cover?
I think there's certain colors that match certain atmospheres in music, and I also think there's certain colors that match certain moods. And to
Right.
me, purple has always had like a bit of a darkness to it, but then also like it kind of feels quite of a what's the word, like a deep color, like
Right.
so I think it matched the sentiment of the weight of the mask really well.
Personally, I have come to attach this color purple to songs like how to swing down and pillar in the sand. I don't know if for me that's the better reflection of this album, like the atmosphere of that song. Maybe it's not entirely about what this album is about. Uh, but yeah, purple is the right color in my opinion. But how did you arrive to this idea, or what sort of direction did you give to the artist?
It was a really easy process with Hester, the artist. Um, so I sent her the album and I told her the vague idea of what I wanted, the album title. I knew I wanted another animal skull because they represent that kind of loss of innocence. They represent like a beauty, but also the sadness of death. And then I always think that horned animals, the reason we go for deers and animals with antlers or horns is because they feel quite like empowering in their stance and the way they look as skulls. So I knew we wanted another animal skull on the album, and I wanted the animal skull to take the shape of a mask that's being held up by sort of struggling hands. And the flowers are there to represent that kind of rebirth and regrowth that is kind of occurring when you're going through a bad time, and like how it pushes you to grow as a person. So those are kind of the meanings, the symbolism that I get passed on to the artist. And she drew what you see today of the final artwork of The Weight of the Mask is what she drew first time. Like I didn't have to send her any corrections or changes or notes. She got it first go and she really understands us. So she is an artist that it's a real privilege to work with her. She did an amazing job.
Has it always been the case of you like find an easiness in the choice of the album cover compared from previous processes?
No, it's never been that easy before. So yeah, like with When I Die Will I Get Better, we struggled with originally the background was meant to be green and for that album, and we struggled a lot with yeah, sort of picking color palettes for albums and going back and forth a lot on what we wanted. I mean, I drew the first album cover.
Oh,
So that was an interesting one, and people still don't know what it is. They go, "Is it a ram? Is it a wave? Who knows?" But yeah, I mean, I made that due. I am not a great artist, but I drew it because we had a small budget, so we couldn't afford to get someone else to make an album cover for us at the time. So yeah.
I also want to ask you about the curve of evolution from Svalbard. I mean, from album to album, musically it shows different elements, and you start messing or dealing with other elements more progressively. You have the influences of black metal, maybe the other ones are punk, crust. The band is described as post-hardcore. Maybe you don't think about it that much. But when you this is a hard question to touch. I mean, give me 1 second to process the question. Because there's this idea of the natural evolution of a band, right? And from it's hard to have hope to when I die will I get better. There's an element of surprise there that yes, it has some sort of natural progression with your sound, but at the same time the band has to make some risks, like embrace the idea of working with different elements and exploring more. So what I'm saying is, do you had have you had to reconcile the idea of losing an element of your sound in order to progress and find the next thing in your music?
I don't feel like we've ever had to kind of lose a part of our style with our music before making moving on to the next album. It always feels very natural to do what comes next and what feels right. Like I don't think there's ever been anything where we've sat down deliberately and gone, okay, we're not going to play in that style anymore. We're not going to play that style of riff anymore. So there's not really any sense of loss because it feels like one continuous journey for me across all our albums. It feels like all of the core elements that make us us and make our sound unique have stayed with the band. They've just developed more.
And what we don't hear about an album, like the songs that you disregard, are any are different, are maybe what you don't consider to represent the idea of the album, or what made you disregard them?
Oh, as in the songs that didn't make it onto the album. Um, I think the main reason they didn't make it was that we couldn't all agree on them.
Okay.
So there were some songs that I really liked that didn't make the album. There's some songs that other members of the band really liked that didn't make the album. And it's because we all four of us need to be in agreement on a song for it to be used. And sadly, those weren't songs that we were all unanimously in agreement on. So that was the reason for it.
It's a democratic process, right? And
Yeah.
how do you structure the order of the track list? Like that is also a democratic process of choosing the first and the last song.
Yeah, so it was a very annoying process because originally the track list that was proposed by other members, I was completely against. I thought it was a very strange choice of order for the songs. And I had to really fight for certain songs to be moved to other places on the album. But luckily, the one we finally arrived at with the track listing is definitely, I think, one that works, which is good. But originally, it's just crazy how people in the same band as you can have such different ideas. Like, oh, we want this song first. Oh, why? Like,
And
so yeah, there was a bit of debate about the order of the track listing on this album, but we got there in the end.
I'm guessing that you choose the last track for the album, or that was your choice, or anyone else in the band.
I think we were all in agreement that
Okay.
To Wilt Beneath the Weight should be the last track on the album because it has that kind of sense of finality to it. So that was one of the ones that was an obvious choice.
Okay. And do you have a favorite song on this album? Like one eager to play live?
I mean, so my favorite song on this album is How to Swim Down, and that is actually my favorite Svalbard song that we've ever written. However, at the moment, it's not in the live set because when we recorded it in the studio, I did 4 vocal harmonies and Liam did 6 layers of violin, which isn't easy to create live. We don't play to backing tracks. Everything you see when you come and see a Svalbard show is all 100% live. So it's going to be a hard song to replicate live, basically. And we're trying to figure out how we can do that and maybe do a different version of it live or something. But it is my favorite song. It's actually my favorite song we've ever written.
Ah, I agree with that sentiment. Because this song is a first for the band, as you mentioned, with the violin and the overall sentiment of the song. Also with the music video. that you did for this song. What I'm trying to say is this song has any particular influence or inspiration for the decision of choosing a violin as an extra texture or layer in the song?
I mean, Liam, who performed the violin parts, also plays violin in a band called Morrow, and I saw him play violin with them, and I was like, why are you doing that in Svalbard? Because it sounds really good. But we could never find. We wanted violin on the previous album, When I Die Will I Get Better, but we never really found a track where it suited the song. And we're the kind of band where we're not just going to put violin on because we want it on. Everything has to be about serving the song. And when we wrote How to Swim Down, I think both of us clicked and we knew, we were like, this is it. This is the violin song. So that moment, it just felt like, okay, this was our chance to really add these string orchestral elements to a song and build it from there. And it really worked. So that was how that came about. But then in terms of influences, like I love bands like My Dying Bride, who have violin, and I also love a lot of more symphonic orchestral metal. So any opportunity to have stringed instruments on a Svalbard song is a chance I'm going to be taking, because that's very much a sound that appeals to me.
So you are open to the idea of embracing this element in your music for future releases, right?
Definitely, definitely, yeah.
And what about the music video that I mean the storytelling of this video is like very emotional. It's very telling of the emotion of the song. You know, the darkness, the shadow that absorbs. Um, how did you work with the artist for this music video?
The animator for the video for How to Swim Down is called Boy Tillikens, and he is an animator who's worked with many different musical artists and people over the years. So he's a very, very talented animator. And I sat down and created a loose storyboard for what I wanted to happen in the animated video, and I sent him a few examples of animation that I liked, or yeah, sort of emotions that I wanted to convey in the video, and then left him to it, and then this is what he created, and he did an amazing job. We're really pleased with it.
Well, this the emotion of the song and also the animated video reminded me of a song from a band called Vampilia. I don't know if you're familiar with them, from Japan. And I would like to recommend one song in particular of them that maybe will resonate with you for the particularities of this song and music video. I will send it for you later in an email, if you don't mind.
Okay. Yeah,
Um,
of course.
but I would also like to talk to you about you as a listener, if you feel that you have evolved over the years as well.
As a listener, as in listening to music,
Right.
um, I think my taste has definitely changed over time. And well, yeah, the main things that I really enjoy listening to and get the most emotion from now is video game soundtracks. I really love listening to Final Fantasy orchestral soundtracks, Kingdom Hearts soundtracks, and the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim soundtrack is, I think, the most beautiful piece of music ever created. So yeah, that's kind of how I've evolved as a listener, as my taste has definitely changed a little bit. I really, really love a lot of power metal now and symphonic metal and stuff, which I think maybe 10 years ago I would have found that too cheesy, but now I really appreciate the craft and the detail that goes into it.
Well, I want to dedicate a little bit about this conversation about it, about you as a listener, what you could recommend to the audience and to your fans. But well, yeah, let's start there. What are your biggest recommendations or discoveries that you think, oh wow, this has blew my mind?
Recently, I discovered a band called Aether Realm from North Carolina. They're kind of melodeath, but also very like epic sounding, and I think they have a lot of interesting influences. They're the most Scandinavian sounding metal band from America. But their new single has the vocalist from Soilwork guesting on it. It's very good. It's called Should I? And the guitar solos are my favorite thing in Aether Realm. I think they're very dynamic and full of feeling, and you can really hear like all kinds of genres, influences in the guitar solos. So anything from blues to classical to metal, the phrasing on the solos is excellent. So yeah, Aether Realm are probably the band I would recommend at the moment. There's a band from the UK as well called Fellowship. They are a UK power metal band. They've just released their debut album called The Saberlight Chronicles. It's very epic. It's very uplifting. The lyrics are quite different for a power metal band. It's a little bit more emotive. And yeah, their singer is absolutely phenomenal.
And what about power metal, man? Do you think power metal as a whole? Do you think that you enjoy more nowadays than in the past?
I think I have an appreciation now for how uplifting it is and how like majestic and that kind of that fantasy world. I think when you're younger, you kind of tend to be magnetized towards what you think is cool rather than what actually lights a spark inside of you. But now I'm a bit older. I'm not, I don't believe in the phrase guilty pleasure, and I wouldn't be ashamed to say I love power metal because I think it has some of the greatest musicianship ever on power metal. So yeah, I think I've just got better as a listener at being more honest with myself about what really strikes a chord with me.
Well, that's also important, and almost equally as important as getting better with the instrument. You know, to find a more amplifying scope of influences, maybe subconsciously, like options there for you. Do you allow your personal influences or taste to have a room in your music? Not in the way of changing the nature of your music, but like reflect on the transition, the emotion, that kind of thing.
Um, I think what really influence the music I listen to that influence I never try to emulate the things that inspire me. So I don't listen to a band and think, oh, I want to write a song exactly like that. If anything, what I take from it is the feeling. And I think people are surprised when they see what I listen to because a lot of the music I listen to doesn't sound anything like Svalbard at all. Um, and so, yeah, or even when I'm talking about being inspired by video game soundtracks, what I'm inspired by is that emotion and that feeling in the melody and that kind of bittersweet quality that kind of really tugs at the heartstrings. It's the same emotion that I want to create with my music in a completely different way. Like you would never know that I'm influenced by the Kingdom Hearts soundtrack if you listen to Svalbard, but that is where it comes from. It's just a very indirect path of influence.
And could we expect something different from you in the future beyond Svalbard?
Yeah. From Svalbard or from me?
From you.
From me, yes. Yeah, I'm working on some other stuff at the moment and it's gonna be a fun time.
How far are we to discover that surprises?
Oh, quite a way off. Quite a way
Uh,
off.
okay, let's wait. Let's wait. Well, one of my final questions: if you could relate or assimilate um the emotion behind the weight of the mask, or attach it to any other particular work that already exists, like a movie, a painting, a book, an artist, uh, which one will it be and why?
Oh, that's a really good question. Um, Sorry, this is a really good question. Uh,
Take the time, no problem. The reason for this question is because there's something always lurking in the back of your mind, like some visuals or something that you okay, this reminds me of this or that, you know. So maybe there's something there for you.
Um, I would probably say some kind of tragic but
Uh,
beautiful film, but I can't think of like one that I specifically would pick. I mean, there's a a movie called Song of the Sea. It's an animated film, but it's quite dark. I would probably say that definitely encaptures a lot of the emotions, similar emotions that you can find on The Weight of the Mask.
Yeah, I will describe this album as just tragic, but not all about tragedy. You know, so there's some hope in the end, and this is the duality that I am trying to express to you. What I like about this album, that this is the most I don't know, the best element for this album. Let's say that
Oh,
duality.
thank you.
Well, this was a pleasure. Thank you for the time. If you have anything else to say to the audience, please.
Oh, just thank you so much for your support. Really appreciate it. Thank you for having me. And hopefully we will be coming out to play some shows in Mexico in the future.
Are there any plans?
We're trying to make something happen.
Nice. Well, we will be waiting again. Thank you, and I hope to see you here and you know, enjoy your music life. I'm waiting
Oh,
for you.
thank you very much.